Hello, everybody, and welcome to this DIT China Special Interest Group webinar. We're updating on China biopharmaceutical landscape and partnering opportunities from a UK perspective. I'm Steve Bates, and I'll be introducing some of the heritage of how we got here as the BIA group for those of you who may be unfamiliar. And if all the technology is working, Sam, can we progress to the next slide, please? That's me in my younger years with a shorter haircut and a tie on. But you'll see me in various guises over the next 5 minutes, because this is a journey that we've been on for a number of years, really because the special interest group was set up a few years ago for biotech and early stage companies. And I'll give you the heritage of where we've got to over the past few years so you can understand what we're doing today and why we're updating. And it's been a fantastic collaboration between the groups you can see here, to provide a forum for UK organisations to explore opportunities to grow their business with China via trade and investment. Next slide, please. And that's really because a few years ago, BIA members came together and could see that there have been changes in Chinese policy, reimbursement had changed. There were lots of fantastic new companies starting in China that people wanted to partner with. Capital markets were going very strongly, and there were improved access to markets for international companies. That was really the context in which this group formed 4 or 5 years ago. And we were able, before the pandemic, to travel and build some great collaborations, particularly in Wuxi with the iCampus, and here's Jane Osborne, the chair of the BIA at the time, and Andy Richards, with others opening the iCampus in 2019 in partnership with AstraZeneca. And really, I think through that time, we were engaged through the going to conferences. The BioCentury and Bay Helix conference at China Healthcare Summit in 2019 was a fantastic event. We had a UK panel there. I had a beard at the time, moving on. And that then also we're able to engage with other fora, the Bao Forum in Henan, and meet delegations as they came to the UK as well through 2019. So we were going great guns around that time. People were coming to the UK, and we were always keen to partner wherever there was an opportunity to build the bridge, whether that be in the US or other locations. But of course, the global pandemic has hit, and we were virtualized in 2020. And I believe we were able to keep this relationship going, but it was in a new format through 2020 as it became far harder to travel and things were virtualized. But it was great to see the continued participation of people on our journey, maintaining our relationships and continuing our collaboration through 2020. And that continued into 2021. As we continue to look at ways in which we could update on opportunities, keep people engaged, even though it was more difficult to do other than virtually. So you can see this is something that's been going on for us. It's been consistent for us through years, and it was great to be able to do the Wuxi Healthcare Forum 2021 UK reception at the same time last year. Another feature that's happened in the time we've had this group together is obviously the UK has put together its national security and investment regime that came into force this year and applies to transactions in terms of takeovers and mergers on or after the 12th of November 2020. I believe that the UK government has listened to some of the concerns of BIA companies, and if you look at the detail in the next slide, particularly around the definitions of synthetic biology, we were able to, I think, advise and provide some thinking about how that could work and help on the sector definition. So I think we've been able to make sure that that's manageable. And if you look at the next slide, this is obviously a new thing that's in operation very recently. So some companies are thinking this through and thinking through the implications of this. Next slide. And we're very keen to make sure that this appropriate legislation doesn't prevent trade and investment flowing globally at all, and we're keen to see if people have got any experience or have any questions. You know, we work closely with the BASE team in government, and they're the gang who you can go to, and also talk to us at the BIA if you have industry to industry questions that you want to ask. So I think as we set the scene for today, my colleague Miriam found me this fantastic Confucius quote: "Does not matter how slowly you go, so long as you do not stop." I think we are committed to this. This is an enduring endeavour for us at the BIA. We believe that this is an important part of the landscape going forward, and we're committed to it. And it's fantastic to see so many of you here today with a fantastic lineup of speakers as well. I think that this is clear because there are shared global agendas, such as those on antimicrobial resistance, where we will need to partner and engage, which is a challenge to humankind wherever we are in the world. Obviously, I hope we can learn the lessons of the present pandemic and think about how we can do preparation for pandemics going forward in an even stronger and collaborative way across borders. That will be important. I think that will be a shared agenda. And of course, there are many new technologies that are emerging both within China and some from the UK, where global norms, global standards, and the regulation of those technologies will be important underpinning enablers for the development of business, development of trade, confidence in trade in those new technologies. And I think, again, that's something where working together, collaborating is really, really important. With that, a little history byway, I hope that set up what I think is going to be a fantastic hour of talks and discussion. If you do have questions, please put them in the box and we will endeavour to get to a Q&A at the end. But with that, I'm going to hand over to Tom Duke, and thank you all for coming. Tom.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. So I'll just share my screen quickly and then pop my camera on. That was a really good introduction to BIA, and particularly to the work you've done in China. The leadership, well, of yourself personally, Steve, and also from the BIA as an institution is incredibly appreciated, and we certainly consider BIA to be a very valuable partner. As you say, Steve, the China opportunity is a long-term one and a short-term one, but it's certainly something that needs to be approached properly and with the right partners. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that now. So first of all, I'm going to spend about 5 or 10 minutes giving a quick update on the UK, well, on the pharma landscape within China, and some of the trends that are driving that. But I'm very keen, of course, that we then really dive down into some of the detail of how UK companies and Chinese entities can work together. And indeed how we as DIT China, Department for International Trade here in China, can work to support you, particularly in the context that we are currently facing regarding Chinese precautions and regulations regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. We also then have a series of speakers from companies, from British companies and especially from Chinese companies, who will share some of their experience with you to showcase some of the opportunities, and then we'll have a chance at the end for some Q&A. So the first thing I should say right now, and some of you are probably reading about this in the news, is that China is currently implementing a number of lockdowns, quite severe lockdowns, even by standards worldwide that we've seen over the past 2 to 3 years. This Shanghai is a city, of course, that's been perhaps most prominent in the international news given its global profile, but there have also been lockdowns opening and closing, opening again in a number of cities across the country. At one point, there was something like 300 or 400 million people in lockdown zone within China about 4 or 5 weeks ago. China is also implementing, and has been implementing ever since early 2020, some quite rigid and restrictive rules on travel in and out of China, which is effectively meaning us based here in China are seeing almost no short-term business travel coming into China, and also very little business turnover in terms of executives from international companies, or indeed the service providers, the legal or other financial providers that work with them, coming in and out. And this is having an impact on business prospects, of course, and especially on how business is done. But these border closures are not deterring everybody. There are still deals being done. We're seeing Chinese companies traveling outside of China, particularly for global trade shows or to meet with particularly important international partners, including in the UK. And we have a team here behind the border, as it were, in mainland China, who are looking at how we can continue to support British companies, including in new or innovative ways, to really understand what opportunities might be available here in the Chinese market. And I'll come on to a couple of examples and opportunities to get involved in some of that towards the end of my short opening now. But first, a quick intro now then to the China market. So China is the world's second largest life sciences market, and it has really come on considerably over the past sort of 5, 10 to 20 years. And I'm sure back in 2019, some of those visits that Steve was highlighting will have brought that home to BIA members who were able to benefit from that. So we've seen China rapidly move up the innovation scale. We've now sort of seen a change in terms of Chinese research and development, Chinese technologies now being amongst the leaders across the whole world, which certainly wasn't the case previously. We've seen Chinese companies increase their scale, increase their reach, both within China's vast geography, but also increasingly internationally as well. We've seen a lot of international collaboration, especially with the US, Europe, including the UK and advanced Asian countries over that time, and indeed in recent years, and including Chinese products being licensed out, as well as historically, of course, strong demand for innovative products being licensed in. All in all, this means that right now, notwithstanding the COVID-19 restrictions, this should be a good time for UK biotech and pharmaceutical companies looking to work in the Chinese market. So I'm going to talk through now some of the drivers behind that very quickly. So first of all, I'd like to mention the policy reforms in China that are supporting some of this trend. Okay. Like countries and regions around the world, the Chinese policy-making system is looking to balance a number of priorities as it maps out a policy roadmap for its industry. So they're looking to ensure quality products for its patients, for its population, but also to balance affordability and make sure that there is access across what is still, on average, a developing country. This trend is also being underpinned by a rapidly aging and a population that's becoming increasingly more wealthy. And this means that pre-pandemic, we were seeing a huge focus in China on non-communicable diseases, similar to in developed countries around the world. And of course, China also has its own, perhaps rather unique approach towards industrial strategy and industrial policy, and the support that it gives its companies. And this can lead to challenges for around intellectual property, for example, but also to opportunities given the significant research and development funding that comes with some of these industrial policies, including for collaborations with world-leading international partners. But policy reform continues. So over the last 5 years, we have seen China become, when it wants to be, and in areas that it prioritizes, one of the fastest countries in which to launch new medicines. So the drug inspection and approval process has been evolved, has been reformed over time. And the latest figures were that 61 innovative drugs were approved in 2021 in China, which is the highest we've seen over recent years, up from the 46 back in 2020. And of those approvals in 2021, it is roughly split half and half between domestic approved drugs and those developed by international companies overseas. Again, we have seen various initiatives rolled out to incentivize innovative drugs to be registered first in China, whether they are developed by Chinese companies or increasingly international companies. And these incentives can include things like fast-track pathways, incentives around patent protection, including potentially in the future patent term extension, and also some details around clinical trial regimes. So there's a lot of policy incentives being rolled out that apply, yes, to the development of the domestic industry, but also to the international partners that the Chinese government is trying to attract to do business and to do research with here in China. Of course, this is all backed up, the industrial strategy is backed up by funding, particularly focused around research and development. So the Chinese government has pledged to increase its R&D budget, which is already incredibly large, by 7% a year up to 2025. And some of the priority areas of focus on the macro level touch on subsectors of interest to this audience and to the BIA. So these include genetics and biotech, brain science and clinical sciences and healthcare. And overall, China's aggregate R&D spend is currently at 2.4% of GDP, which is significantly above the UK's 1.7%, although still lagging behind world leaders, including the US, up at 3.5%. But that does illustrate, especially given the size of China's economy, the scale of ambition and the scale of research and development ambition that China does have. So the funding available is one of the attractions and one of the things that can facilitate UK-China collaborations. And this does not necessarily only mean government funding, of course, but there are increasingly large numbers of Chinese private companies or indeed Chinese hybrid or state-owned companies acting in the healthcare and life sciences sector that are looking at committing funds to collaborations with foreign partners. Some of these companies are particularly well capitalized at the moment as a result of the pandemic. Perhaps they have got good earnings based on vaccines or deployment tests and other technologies that have been deployed in the pandemic response around the world. And many of these companies are now looking to make strategic investments or indeed to branch out into other sort of new business areas, find high quality assets, business partners, facilities or expertise around the world to build out their capabilities. Now, of course, working with Chinese investment doesn't come completely without risk in any sector. Due diligence is essential. People should apply the sort of common sense and focus on the fundamentals that they always do when they're working with partners looking to spend money at fund and potentially own or be able to access assets and technology. But there is no doubt that at the moment that we are in a particularly strong phase for the Chinese sector, and that does bring opportunities as well. And Chinese venture capitalists are looking to establish themselves globally as rivals to those in the US and elsewhere as reliable sources of funding that can be tapped into by some of the best companies around the world. And we will hear a bit more of this, actually, how some of the Chinese funding streams have supported collaboration from some of the speakers later today, including Diurnal. And there are several other examples that we may also touch on in the Q&A if that is of interest to people on the line today. So international partnerships, a key part of Chinese industry development at the moment, particularly in developed countries around the world. And I should say again that we are now looking at a Chinese industry that is not only looking to license in innovative assets, although they absolutely are, but also looking to collaborate in terms of Chinese assets and looking at investment opportunities around the world as well. And particularly in the licensing field, we think this is an area of strong potential at the moment. And China had 171, according to industry data, 171 inward cross-border licensing deals last year, and these primarily came from Europe and the United States, and of course did include the UK. So before handing over to some of the speakers, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we do. We have an expert team in China from the Department for International Trade, so working on behalf of the UK government, working on behalf of all British companies in the sector, including those on the line today, of course. We look wherever we can to provide bespoke support for companies to help them to achieve what they're looking to achieve in the Chinese market with Chinese companies. Now, of course, as I said earlier on, this is now changing a little bit. The nature of how we operate is necessarily having to change because of the restrictions on business travel between our two countries, and how we represent the UK and how we help to pitch UK companies and help to matchmake with Chinese partners at international events is having to change as a result. And we're really keen to hear any feedback or suggestions for how we can continue to adapt this approach to best serve your needs in the current environment. To give an example of something that is coming up, we are working towards September 2022 for a postponed, rearranged edition of China Bio, so one of the flagship industry events. This has, of course, historically been a large in-person event. This year, again, we expect it to be hybrid, by which we mean people won't travel in from overseas, but there'll be an in-person gathering in China with connections virtually to partners around the world. We'll be looking to offer British companies a chance to participate in the event, including without having to pay the usual entrance fee, which is about $1,000, I think. So that's a bargain. And also, I guess there'll be a saving on airfare this year as well, perhaps, unfortunately. So yeah, we really are looking to push a strong UK presence that is proportionate and represents the strength of our industry and indeed the strength of our offer to the companies that we'll be connecting with in China. We'll be there face to face, so we'll be able to sort of network in the room and make sure that things land right, and then we'll be able to set up subsequent conversations virtually and potentially in person subsequently. And we really are looking to kind of do a bit of trial and error to work out how best we can support companies for these types of opportunities, and keen to hear from you about how we might help more. And we expect a wide range of Chinese large and small private and state-owned pharma, biotech and healthcare sector companies to all be there at this flagship industry event for the Chinese market. And one of the ways that we do hope that we can help UK entities to connect with partners, customers, investors in China is through our UK China Business Connect platform, which at the front end is a Chinese language portal, which showcases UK companies to partners in China. There is an English language backend to help companies upload their content, and we will be running around these big events like China Bio a number of digital campaigns, Chinese language, Chinese facing campaigns in the Chinese media ecosystem, really looking to connect with key target audiences with key messages and promoting, again, this what we believe is a world leading UK offer. So again, looking to connect with companies that would find this type of digital delivery, digital marketing opportunities of interest to your business development plans in China. So before we move on to hear from some companies themselves, some case studies, quickly outline our team across China. We have people in all the UK diplomatic missions across the country. So I'm based here in Beijing. We have a team in Shanghai, a team in Guangzhou, Chongqing in the southwest of China, and we also do have a general presence in Wuhan in central China as well. The contact details for the team are up there. We have people with impressive industry commercial experience. We have postdoc expertise in various parts of the sector. We really have a diverse and expert team who are at your disposal to connect with potential partners, to work with regulators or whatever it is you think you would need. So thank you very much for listening to me at the start. I'll be sort of guiding us through the rest of this afternoon's session. I'd like now to hand over to the first speaker, to a UK company that's going to talk a little bit about their experience in China. So I'd like to hand over now to Richard Bungay, who is Interim Chief Executive and CFO at Diurnal, who I mentioned a little bit earlier on. I'm sure Richard will give a full introduction to the sector, but they have some exciting news and had some great developments here in China recently. And of course, Diurnal is a pharma company dedicated particularly to developing hormone therapeutics that aid lifelong treatment for rare and chronic endocrine conditions. But as I say, I'm sure Richard will go into more detail of that and how they have had recent success in the Chinese market. Richard, over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the introduction, and to BA and DIT for putting Diurnal up on the platform today. Jenny, if you can go to the first slide. Thank you. So just to set the context of Diurnal, as Tom said, we're a company focused on hormone replacements. We're an endocrinology company. We look at the niche and rare opportunities that sit outside of the better known hormonal conditions like diabetes and growth hormone disorders. And our portfolio is by and large hormone replacements or synthetic hormone replacements, most of which are long off patent. So the company is essentially reformulating products to deliver hormones in a more physiological profile. Competition for us would be sort of generic steroids or steroid replacement type products. And therefore, I think when we go back to the start of 2018, the beginning of our sort of journey with China, perhaps wasn't the most obvious market for us to pursue in business development terms. But as we've heard from Tom and also from Steve as well, the Chinese market is moving very quickly. And really, there were several factors that converged during sort of 2018 that were helpful in terms of kickstarting our business development opportunities. Firstly, I think an increased focus in China on treating pediatric diseases, and our lead product is a pediatric opportunity. I think more importantly, the disease of which we're most focused on, called congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH, appeared on a list of rare diseases. It was the first list of rare diseases published by the Chinese health authorities, which came out in May 2018, 121 rare diseases listed, and ours was amongst them. And I think finally, some of you will be aware there's an initiative to establish a specialist centre in Hainan province, the Rare Disease Treatment Centre. So certainly much more of a focus in China on some of the rarer opportunities. Now, of course, China doesn't have yet an orphan equivalent legislation as we see in Europe, Japan, or the US, but certainly an increased focus. And I think what we saw was the opportunity for new companies to establish themselves as specialists for treating rare diseases. So if you do the next slide, Sam, thank you. So suddenly we found ourselves with a flurry of interest in Diurnal, and particularly as our lead product, Alkindi, is approved in Europe, so already registered and a dossier that could be adapted for the Chinese market. The interest really came through three sources, primarily the usual channel of partnering meetings, particularly BioEurope. That's an empty Hamburg 2019 on the right there. Companies approaching us directly through our website, having tracked the EMA approval of our product. But actually, importantly for this call, introductions directly by DIT as well. So we had several introductions of companies looking to get into this rare disease space and looking for opportunities to partner with Western companies. So it was a fairly long-winded process to go through, and you'll see from the next slide, we started in 2018, we finished in early 2021. So I think a relatively long partnering timeline and a few full starts and a few sort of wrong turns on the way. So I think in terms of some of the challenges we saw in the process, I mean, many of the companies were approaching us directly, either through the BioEurope portal or through our website. And there's no equivalent, at least not that I've found in China, of Companies House. So it's quite challenging sometimes to know the veracity of the companies. And actually the DIT was extraordinarily helpful in helping us navigate that. I think a more specific problem we had, and one I'm not sure I've ever seen in my sort of career of business development, we were approached by two companies in the same group in China who seemed to be competing against each other. And again, it was the DIT helped us here unravel that situation and work out really which one of the two we should be focused on. So I think that's possibly a unique situation locally in China. We were lucky enough to get out to Beijing in November 2019, and what we saw there actually was the sophistication of the distribution operations in China. And as you can imagine, with a very large population and an extraordinarily large landmass, it is quite a feat to get drug to patients who need it. And I think we were very pleasantly surprised by the sophistication of that system. Coming to sort of discussions, and we got to term sheets, obviously then looking at legal agreements. It is quite a challenge to keep track of regulatory requirements in China, which do keep changing. So that's something I would just flag up as something to keep an eye on. In terms of sort of selling the deal through to our board, I mean, the usual concerns, I think Tom had flagged up: intellectual property, it's concerns about development of parallel products, etc. So that was all had to be addressed through the legal process. And naturally, there are differences between Chinese law and English law. And there we were fortunate to work with Mills and Reeve, who have an association with Fangda, a large Chinese firm. And I think that was quite essential in unraveling some of the potential differences between English law and Chinese law. So if you need the next slide, Sam. So sort of cutting to the finish, we ended up executing a deal with a company called Citrine, which has currently been rebranded as Rarestone. That was right at the beginning of 2021 for our pediatric product, Alkindi. A classical licensing deal structure. Rarestone itself was, I think, very much amongst the mold of companies that Tom describes, so set up with venture capital money, much of which came from China, some from the US. So trying to sort of import that Western model of rare disease focused companies to China. The license covered China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, and really handed over responsibility for our product to Rarestone. So they conduct any development, the regulatory submissions, and then ultimately the marketing, distribution, commercialization of the products. $500,000 upfront, and this is, bear in mind, this is a very niche opportunity. and close to $13 million of milestones plus royalties on sales. And having dipped their toe into the market of the diseases we're interested in, we then subsequently, 4 months later, executed the second deal with Rarestone, which was around our adult product called Efmody, again, a hydrocortisone-based product, and a larger deal reflecting the bigger opportunity for adults versus pediatric patients. So experience since, we've been very pleased with our partner. Certainly, they've been essential in helping us understand the specific regulatory requirements in China. Our teams very much enjoyed working. There was a very high level of sophistication in the team. Many of them have worked for the larger pharmaceutical companies in China and now looking to enter a more entrepreneurial environment. So I think overall, a long-winded process, but actually a good outcome, and we're very pleased to have our partnership in place with Rarestone. And Tom, I think I'll then hand back to you and Q&A at the end.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Richard, very much for that. I mean, congratulations, first of all, but also, that's a really helpful description of some of the steps that you went through, some of the challenges that needed to be unraveled along the way. But great that you have you've got to that well, not end point necessarily, but got to the sort of deal close point, and had that success. Also pleased that we were able to support you along the way. I think some of those things may well be familiar to some of the companies on the line today as well, but it's sort of illustrating we are here to help with these kind of things, especially where there are unfamiliar either regulatory systems or administrative processes where we might be able to do a little bit of legwork, either to connect you with people that can help or to help directly ourselves. So really good to hear about that. Thank you. And if there are any questions for Richard, please do drop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will pick them up in a short while time. So thank you, Richard. I'd now like to move on to a sort of group of Chinese companies who are going to sort of talk a bit about what they're looking for and what they offer to partners from the UK side as well. I'd first of all like to hand over to Dr. Maria Dahl, who is COO, one of the founders of head of Innovent Biologics, currently based in London, I believe, Maria, or certainly last time we spoke, you were in London. So please, I'd like to hand over to you now. I'd be really interested to hear sort of updates and some views based on your fantastic experience in recent years. Maria, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tom. And I'm really delighted to be presenting at this very interesting meeting. And thanks to you, Tom, and Steve, and all the organizers for setting this up. So as Tom mentioned, I'm head of Innovent Biologics in Europe, and I'm very pleased to be presenting this talk from our European headquarters here in London, Paddington, in the United Kingdom. Go to the next slide, please. So Innovent Biologics started out in China back in 2011 with just $5 million in venture funding. And the journey has been very rapid, and I think by most standards, very impressive, to now a global, fully integrated biopharmaceutical company listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. We have 7 products on the market in China within oncology and immunology. And we're now working towards also getting these commercialized outside China, both in Europe and in the US. We have a rich clinical stage development pipeline, primarily in oncology and immunology. And again, while we have originally developed these for the China markets, we're now also in place to develop them for the European and US markets, and in some cases with partners. And I'll talk to you more about that in a moment. We have manufacturing capabilities, so we manufacture all of our own medicines, including and also our partners' medicines. We have 60,000 liters of capacity at the moment in China, and we are currently constructing another 172,000 liters of capacity. And these operations and facilities have been inspected by the FDA and EMA, so they also operate to international standards. Importantly, for the context of the presentation today, we have a very rich history in partnerships, working both with big global pharma like Roche and Eli Lilly in particular, but also with many biotech, including in Europe. I'm pleased to say last year, We did 3 deals in Europe, including with Union Therapeutics in Denmark for an autoimmune product in phase 2 clinical trials. We did a deal with Synaffix in the Netherlands for an ADC and a platform deal. And we did a deal with UCH in Switzerland. The company is today 6,100 employees. The large majority of them are still in China, but we are building, as I mentioned, the business outside as well. Move to the next slide. The company did start in China and still has a very strong presence in China. The China headquarters is in Suzhou. We are at present building a large new R&D center in Shanghai, which will be the new China headquarters. It's set to open next year. I think many of us hope to be able to travel out to China to be there for that opening, which will be very exciting. In 2018, Innovent opened its first US subsidiary, and last year it was expanded with an R&D site in Rockville in Maryland. The aim would be to have around 150 R&D scientists there this year, and expanding. We'll also have clinical operations there. And last but in no way least, we opened European operations in 2020, and we have the headquarters here in London, but also we have people in Switzerland and in France. Go to next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier on, we have a very strong focus on oncology and immunology, but also some products in metabolic disorders and ophthalmology. And as we talk about partnering and working with companies, including some of you here on the line for this call today, clearly a strong interest of ours is to supplement and build on our current pipeline. We have, as I mentioned before, 7 products on the market in China and working towards also getting them commercialized outside China. And in the pipeline, we have a very rich portfolio, particularly in oncology, with a strong interest in lung cancer, liver cancer, hematology, and gastrointestinal and gynecological cancers. And outside cancer, autoimmune disorders and anything immunology is a very strong interest for us. We're looking both for broad patients and big market opportunities, but also small opportunities with clear patient selection and a clear unmet medical need. So if we move to the next slide. Innovent, as I think most of you will probably know, we really started out in biologics, and that is clearly our bread and butter. We're well leading in protein engineering, and the internal discovery machine at Innovent, the Innovent Academy, is very much focused on antibodies, ADCs, and a number of other biologics platforms, including cytokine engineering. So that is clearly both in terms of our in-house R&D focus, that is a clear, a strong interest, but also for the partnerships. And we have teams working both in the US and in China, developing these assets. So for partnering, I would say those, while we have a very strong interest in biologics, and anyone who has an interesting platform or a product in oncology or autoimmune or immunology, which is a biologic, will get our interest. We also do small molecule deals, including the deal I mentioned before to you, we did with Union Therapeutics. So if you move to the next slide. So finally, then, just to summarize where we are with our partnering strategy and BD activities. We have sort of 3 pillars to our interest. There is one sort of, which is the one traditional China company interest, which is basically we're looking for late stage products for the China markets. That's in the middle. You see under the strengthen the global product portfolio, under the Chinese flag. Clearly, as most other Chinese companies, will always be very interested if you come to us with a China opportunity, particularly if mid to late stage. However, as we're now also a global company, we just want to flag that we can add a lot of value to you as partners through either co-development or co-commercialization or other arrangement, also covering outside China. And including also contributing our manufacturing facilities in that respect. So while we started out primarily as a China interest company with an interest in deals for China, we're now going beyond that, and would love to also work with you outside China and help you build your own capabilities and expertise there. We are also in platforms very interested. As I mentioned before, we did the deal with Synaffix last year. This is a global deal, global rights. So we'd love to hear from you if you have any interesting deals. And last but not least, I'd also say, and as Tom mentioned in his presentation, while we do a lot of inbound, and you'll see last year we were very, very active on the inbound front, we are also looking for outbound deals. But there, the key focus for us is strong partners who can help us co-develop and co-commercialize outside China, because as you could see, we have a very rich pipeline. And there's a limit to what we can do ourselves, and we think there's a lot of win-win working with others. So we would love to work with you, love to hear from you. We think the China-UK relationship is incredibly important, and we really look forward to being able to, when the world opens up again, further strengthening that relationship. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, as always, incredibly impressive and inspiring. Thank you for that. I see a few questions coming in the Q&A and the chat. We're sort of monitoring that here, as are the team back in London. Please do keep dropping things in, including for Dr. Dahl, Maria there as well, and we will pick them up towards the end. I'd like to move through quickly now, though, to our next speaker. This is Dr. Li Jin from HitGen. So HitGen is headquartered in Chengdu in southwest China, but has subsidiaries across the world, fast globalizing Chinese company, subsidiaries including in the UK and Cambridge, also in the US. I'd like to hand over quickly now to Dr. Li to talk through his experience as a founder and chairman and CEO of HitGen and their rapid growth in recent years. Dr. Li, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Tom, for the introduction, and thanks to BIA and DIT for this opportunity. I'll now switch on my slides, and hopefully you can all see. Okay, so really I appreciate very much the opportunity to talk about HitGen and really share experience and also look for potential collaborations in different areas. HitGen is a publicly listed company in Shanghai Stock Exchange. We actually founded in 2012 when I returned from UK to China. We are very much focused on the small molecule side and building a number of innovative technologies to support the discovery and research of small molecules and nucleic acid-based drugs. And we currently are mostly based in Chengdu as well as Cambridge, UK. And since this is not only about HitGen in Chengdu, but also about our sort of subsidiary in Vernalis, I just give a quick introduction about Vernalis. Vernalis is a 20-year-old company based in Cambridge, UK, very much focused on the structure-based drug design and fragment-based drug discovery. There is a team about 70, 80 people, and very deep expertise in experience in structural biology, as well as fragment-based drug discovery. And over the last few years, through the collaboration, they delivered multiple candidates into clinical trial. And we became part of the whole group at the end of 2020. And also that's during the height of the COVID impact in China. We actually managed this merger without actually, for me, going to Cambridge. That partly reflecting a little bit different experience from what Richard talked about, the company registration and all that process. It was fairly straightforward as soon as the sort of due diligence and technology analysis and product analysis were completed. And we now obviously have been working together over a year during the fall of 2021. And there's a lot of synergy in technology, collaboration and business starting to emerge. So about HitGen as a group, what we are trying to do is really focus on building an innovative setup, focusing on small molecules and siRNAs as our main modalities for drug discovery. And our commercial models are focused on three. One is the technical services, another one is our in-house project out-licensing, and perhaps eventually a regional product launch in China in specialist area. And we are hoping to achieve all of this by having a strong focus on some core technologies. And we were probably best known in the early days, our effort in the DNA encoded chemical libraries. But in the last few years, through the mergers acquisition with Vernalis, we'll also be having a strong base in FBDD, SBDD, and we have been also building the synthetic oligonucleotide therapeutics platform, as well as our targeted protein degradation platform, as well as some other capabilities. And these are all obviously combined, hope to really make this process from target to leads a lot more effective and efficient, as well as coupled with the traditional lead optimization capabilities as through design, make test cycles, as well as preclinical capabilities. We can go from target to leads to a preclinical candidate and IND, so the launches. And through last few years, we have built a wide range of collaborations and service partnership. When all these are publicized, individually publicized the collaboration with the big pharmas and the biotechs outside China as well as inside China. Now we have over 300 existing partners. We hope this technology platform can really benefit a lot more as not only small, but large, but also small startups and biotech companies alike to really access this tremendous resource and capability for their discovery effort. In addition to this platform-based collaborations sort of arrangement, we have also been progressing some of the in-house projects into the clinical trial. Currently, we have 3 products, HG030, which is an anti-KROS1 inhibitor in phase 1. And the rights of that of China has been licensed to a China-based pharma company, but the rights outside China are still in our hands, which also has FDA IND approval. The second product is the HG146, which is a selective class 1, class 2B HDAC inhibitor for multiple myeloma and solid tumor. This is also actively in phase 1 trial in China. And the third product is HG381, which is a small molecule STING agonist, which is aimed at sort of activate the innate immunity against sort of cancer and tumors. And this is also in phase 1. All those 3 have, I think, they are among the first group approved for IND in China. So what do we hope to look for is a variety of collaborations at different levels, some technology, very single technology-based collaborations to enhance our sort of DL or FBDD, as well as to jointly use these technologies for different discovery programs. But others obviously is looking for licensees and licensors for some more advanced program, as well as strategic collaborations. Another one is probably around the people, and we are growing, and we obviously want to have more international experts in BD and in other key areas to work with us to really leverage this platform for the R&D of innovative medicine. Hopefully one day we'll all be able to travel, and the top first row is Chengdu, and where we are, Biotown. It's a large sort of biopharma industry base developed in China, 44 square kilometers, I think, and we are among very rapidly developing industrial biopharma industry environment here. Obviously, the bottom line is the UK, Cambridge. That's where the Vernalis is based, and hopefully we can all someday meet up and really explore different collaborations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. I certainly look forward, well, to going to Chengdu would be a nice start, but certainly to going to meet up with friends, colleagues, partners back in the UK as well. Really helpful outline of sort of the areas that you're looking to work in. And again, really welcome and invite any questions or comments either in the Q&A box or in the chat. Moving on to our next speaker from the company Meheco. Meheco is a state-owned enterprise, a particularly large entity that we've worked with over several years here in China, covers a wide range of business areas, both licensing in, licensing out, biological products, diagnostics, medical equipment, consumables, health products, nutrition, etc., etc. But I'd now hand over to Julie Liu from Meheco, who will talk through some of the particular areas of focus and opportunities that she is working on within Meheco and the wider group. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for the introduction, and I will show my screen and share it to each other. Okay. So I will use this model. Is it okay for you to see it?
Yes, I can see the screen, Julie. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm Julie from Meheco. So we are a state-owned company, and today the topic I would like to share is we are a national accredited endorsement business partner for Chinese market for the UK companies or companies from other countries. And Meheco was founded since 1984, and Meheco is always here for every company who would like to have a business in China. And I would like to show the industry position. Meheco Corporation is in the bottom, and we can see that the structure is like from Administration Commission of the State Council, and below that it is our group, which is China General Technology Group Holding. And below that is China Meheco Group, which is our mother company. It's a stock list. It's a listed company in Shanghai stock. So you can see that we are the number one medical group around the world currently. And because of the bed number we owned, we have 46,000 beds in China. And we own 330 medical institutions in 26 provinces in China. Among that, including 27 grade 3 hospitals, 69 grade 2 hospitals. And totally for 1 year, we have over 26 million outpatient service per year. So from this slide, you can see China's map, and with GT logo, you can see where our medical institutions are located. And in Meheco Group is a unique platform under genetic in health field. And in Meheco, we have 3 parts of business. The first part is international business, and the company is a China Meheco Corporation. Here is where I am working for, because our company is working as a bring in and go out. We're taking out the function of this one for the group. And the second part is our pharmaceutical industry part. And in this part, we have 8 factories. We own 4 chemical drug plants, 3 traditional Chinese drug plants, and 1 bioproduct plant. And the third part is pharmaceutical commerce. This part means in China, because if you want to sell the finished dosage or medical devices to the hospitals, we have to distribute by the commerce companies. So our distribution network can cover 31 provinces, which means cover all of Chinese market. So this is the 3 parts of our business. And for the import, because we have import and export business in Meheco Corporation. So for the import business, for the import scope, the products we covering finished dosage, biological products, diagnosed products, medical equipment, health products, herbal products, and the medical consumables, and so on. So for the business model, we are open to different models. Like the general distribution or the terminal direct sales or import services, both okay. So and for the service, like what I said, because the business model is quite different, so our service is also different. For example, the product registration for some companies who like to develop Chinese market, and also we can provide import, warehousing, logistic services for each company, and also we have a bonded warehouse, and also we can operate different models. For the marketing network, because we can cover in different terminals. For example, the hospitals, definitely, because we have our own hospitals, and also we can connect to other hospitals in China. And also for the research institutions for different pharmaceutical areas. And this is what we are doing. And also I would like to show the warehousing and the logistic ability we have, because we are doing quite a large amount of business in China. So totally in the group, we have 41 warehouses located in different main cities in China. I just show one in Beijing, located one house located in Beijing. This is a one house which have high technology, and we also in our ability, we can do cold storage. One house ability is also available for us. And besides that, I also would like to emphasize for the cross-border business, because in the past, I also discussing with DIT for the cross-border business, and the DIT also helped me to get some brands or get some products from UK, because we have the online shops. We also have the cross-border team. We have and here we listed some brands we are working together nowadays. So if some UK company would like to do cross-border, I hope that we can discuss further in the future. And for the production sites, because we have 80 plants in China, and we can covering from the chemical drugs to Chinese herbal products, and from API to finished dosage. So we are open also to discuss some production service if the other companies require such a service to work together with us in China. We are open to discuss. And the third part is about the services, the commerce services. Just now I had mentioned to get into Chinese market, we can connect to different levels of Chinese hospitals, and also we can link to retail partners. Nowadays, we are ranked number 5 in China for the commercial part, and for the import and export, we are number 1. So to summarize, the capability of Mexico is that we can help you to win for Chinese market. So firstly, you can do the product registration, and then we can help you to do import, warehouse, logistic, and bonded services. And finally, we can help you to do the sales and the marketing. So that means we can cover in the whole industry chain for overseas partners who would like to get into Chinese market. And here we have mentioned some advantages of the state-owned companies. So that's all about the introduction about my company, and to hope we have the chance to get connected to each other in the future. Thank you.
Julie, thank you very much. I know there's already been a question looking for your contact details, and they are on the screen there in that final slide. And I think you very powerfully there summarized the scale and the reach that Mexico has, but also the different types of services that you can provide to international partners. So I'm sure there'll be some interest there. People contact Julie directly, or indeed our team here is very happy to sort of help and facilitate introductions if you're not able to take down those details right now. Now I'd like to turn to our final speaker. I think, apologies, we are running slightly over time, but I hope this is a bit useful for everybody. I hope you can hang on a little bit past the turn of the hour. But now I'd like to hand over, please, to Aaron Wang, Investment Director at the company Qilu, based in Jinan in Shanghai. Over to you, Aaron.
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks very much for Tom and Steve, and also the BIA and the DIT audit organizers. Yeah, thanks very much. Just going to share my screen. Yeah, hopefully you can see the screen. Yeah, thanks very much. So first of all, I will give quick introductions about Qilu Pharmaceuticals, and also then a bit about our structures on the partnering and investment that can collaborate with the UK biotechs. So Qilu Pharmaceuticals is a traditional Chinese pharmaceutical company established over 60 years ago, and it's also very large. It's changing itself from the generics and biosimilars to innovative medicines. And the company's annual sales last year is over $5 billion and making it top two among all the Chinese pharmaceuticals in terms of the single drug, that part of the sales. And also the company is expanding, especially in the last 10 years, and so globally, including 2 R&D centers in China and 3 in the US, and the manufacturer sites and the subsidiaries in China and also out of China. So the overall employees of Fertilo Pharmaceuticals is very large, is over 30,000 people, and is increasing as well. And in terms of the enterprise values in the background, is some analysis is among the top 25 in the global pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. And the Fertilo Pharmaceuticals, and we are localized globally. So the majority, although the majority, the manufacturers and the commercialization part is within the China's, but we do have clinical teams, for example, in the US and Australia for early stage clinical trials, and also we have the sales and marketing offices across all the continents, and they collaborate very closely with the local partners, and also working in some of the countries on the late stage, the packagings and for the part of the manufacturers. And also, so we are very open, so all kinds of innovation-based collaborations. Yeah. And the Fertilo Pharmaceuticals is expanding. We're expanding quite a lot in the R&D perspective. And last year is nearly 4 billion Chinese yuan, is over $6 million US dollars. So on the annual R&D expenses, and that's backed with over 3,000 scientists that worldwide, is mainly in China and the US. So we have the R&D centers in Boston and the West Coast and China and some other countries as well. And the majority of our R&D leaders has over 10 years average in the MNCs, and they are covering all modalities, and including small molecule, large molecules, and new modalities as well. And thanks very much for their R&D and input. And now we have over 80 innovative programs, including 23, at least 23, because the number is changing and increasing, and in a month basis, and it's over 23 in clinical stages, and the majority covering oncology, immunology, and anti-infectious diseases. Yeah, so here's our therapeutic area focus, and we are our largest indication is definitely in oncology, but in the other 4 indications, we also have a very strong clinical and commercialization teams that's including autoimmune diseases, anti-infectious diseases, ophthalmology, and cardiovascular disorders. And you can find all these 5 indications are very scalable in China. This only can be achieved a good market penetration through a very large Chinese pharmaceutical companies like us. So that's the cases and our business models. And our modalities is also increasing. I should say that 10 years ago, we only have the small molecules and large molecules, but now we expanded to the other areas like ADCs, oncolytic virus, and mRNAs, sRNAs, and PROTAC, and some other modalities. And quite a few modalities focusing on the oncology area. And in terms of our discovery capacities, and our Shanghai has covering a lot of innovations on ADCs and the PROTAC perspective, and our Boston is mainly on the cell and gene therapies, and our Seattle incubators and R&D centers is mainly on the bispecific and the trait-specific antibodies and the different kind of technologies, and also for our San Francisco incubators as well. Yeah. And then next one is about our clinicals. So we also find ourselves a very strong clinical partners. If any of the UK biotechs want to find Chinese clinical partners and to help them to progress their pipelines. So the clinical part, so we have over 600, there's a full-time employees and a lot of even more numbers of the contractors, and our clinical practice is it's been well proved in China, Australia, and other countries. There's the other strengths that we can offer for our, as a business development or investment partners is that normally we can offer as at the discretion of the other parties that we can offer manufacturer help. This can be a China-based manufacturing, it can be global-based manufacturing, as long as both parties are familiar with the technologies, and it'll be very convenient for the technology transfers. So that means we have, again, it's over thousands manufacturer people, the majority locals in China in a very cost-effective ways. And also because of our business model is previously was in the generics and biosimilars, and now it's changing to innovative medicines. That means that our manufacture is in a very large scales. And if you think about Avastin and other biosimilars, the rationale behind our business to win the China market is the scalabilities. And the final strengths of Tilo Pharmaceuticals is definitely about sales leaderships. So currently we have around 13,000 sales representatives in China, so covering both large cities like Beijing and Shanghai, and also county levels. So that county levels market has been approved to be very hard to be penetrated by single pharmaceutical companies, and we have very strong sales representative teams in China, and that will give us very good confidence and to collaborate with the overseas biotechs to explore the market. So in terms of sales, and the one good example is like Avastin biosimilars. And before we enter into the China market, so the overall China market is about, the market size is about a little bit over 3 billion Chinese yuan. But after we joined in the markets last year, our single revenues is close to 4 billion Chinese yuan. So we are capable of enlarging the China market. So in terms of potential ways of collaborations, so the first of all, I'm in the investment team of the Tilo Pharmaceuticals, and I work very closely with the BD teams. That means that we are open for other business development strategies or investment strategies. And for the business development strategies, if it's a mid to late stage clinical trial assets, we're very open to discuss about the China partnering. That includes direct licensing, option to licensing. And if it is about a preclinical assets, or it has some platform-based technologies, for example, in the ADCs or mRNA field, we are open for the platform-based collaborations together to develop some assets and then to share rights. So that's about BD part. And from the investment part, because the existence of the investment arms, so we are also open for different kind of options, like including the follow-up investments, and for biotech on VC growth stages, including participating in the joint ventures if they want to spin off their whole China business, and will be a very good players, not only providing financings, but also providing infrastructures. And other things is also participating in certain kinds of the new codes. Yes. And in terms of the indication focuses, for the oncology and immunology, these two areas, because we are very good at innovations in these two indications, so we are capable of talking about when it's close to IND ready. And for the cardiovascular, ophthalmological, and anti-infectious diseases, we are open to talk with the companies when they have some early clinical efficacy signals. Yes, and also we're open to talk with the different platform business as mentioned, especially in the mRNA and ADC and oncolytic virus field. Here's the things that we can offer as a good partners. As a BD partners, it's definitely our strengths we've covered across the parameters. I mean, from the clinical trials to participate in different countries, mainly in China, and to the manufacturers in a very low cost ways, and also facilitate the regulatory communications in the China, and also a very reliable commercial partners in the China that has been very well improved through our commercial strengths in China. And as investment partners, I would say it's from the two parts. The one is about the financial part. That means that we normally for the overseas biotechs, we can be as follow-up investors. That means we are very respect the company's independence and their decisions, and also contribute our science insights on the China market. On the other hand, we are also very interested to provide our own infrastructure to our investing targets. That's may start from the CMC stages when they close to the IND submissions and to the later stages into clinical trials. So a few examples about our BD deals then last year. I think majority will be in the oncology side, including the deal with the Sensen Bio with the EpsChem ADCs in the phase 3, and the Sensitive Therapeutics, who is about a peptide for the pancreatic cancers in the phase 2, and also a Peptron for IND stage MIC-1 targeted ADCs. So we're across different, that shows that we're across different modalities and with oncology focus and a little bit tolerance of the risk, but also we are open to other indications as well. Yes, and also there's kind of an investment combined deals. That means apart from the BD licensings, we can also do minority investment in companies. Like the last year, we done the deal with Arbutus for the siRNA drug, and welcome to any other approaches. So the final part is about the licensing opportunities, because we do have some kinds of innovations, and we want to explore the opportunities out of China to find the reliable partners. And this will majorities in the oncology field, but also will be some in the anti-infectious like HPV side, and also maybe in the autoimmune diseases areas. And we are happy to discuss it if any biotechs wish to talk about assets that rise out of China. So that's will give you an idea about what pharmaceutical is and what kind of a partnership you're looking for, and very much look forward to collaborating with you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Aaron. I mean, particularly the slides towards the end there that we're really going into some detail on some of the things that you are looking for, and indeed also slightly before that, some of the collaboration models that you have used successfully with other international partners. I hope, and I think that will be really useful for the people online today, and indeed for others when the slides are circulated. So as I said slightly earlier on, we're running slightly over, to which we apologize. There's been lots of really useful information here. We do have some questions in the chat, so I do propose we very quickly try to address some of those, and then we're very happy to take more detailed discussions offline afterwards. There's one in here which I believe has been directed towards Richard from Diurnal. So maybe, Richard, if you're still online, it'd be great if you could come back on camera. Question from Emma Maloney here, sort of two, well, a one-set question really. I think we can cover the Hong Kong one slightly separately. So for CDMO drug substance manufacturers, do they require accreditation in China similar to the foreign manufacturer accreditation in Japan? And did your partner Rarestone act as your Chinese agent for this, if it was indeed required?
Thanks for the question, Tom. So in Diurnal's collaborations, we are currently the supplier. We supply from our European supply chain into China. What we've been required to do, and I think there's a note of caution for anyone looking at a similar route, is every single component of the drug requires a drug master file or DMF to be filed locally in China. Now, we obviously have a network of suppliers. Some of them are registered already. Some of them are willing to register, and some of them, I would say, are less willing to sort of share their inner secrets with the Chinese regulators. So I would say, although the headline of the deal is that the local partner does all of the development regulatory work, actually it's been quite a burden on our CMC team that we perhaps hadn't envisaged at the beginning of the deal. But again, we're sort of happy to help. I can take the Hong Kong question as well. It's relatively straightforward. So the deal, as I flashed up on the slides, covers 4 territories. They are 4 separate regulatory submissions, similar but not identical. So I guess similar to CMC, it's been a bit of a burden on our regulatory team to sort of supply the different requirements. So something we'd sort of factor in the future if we were to do a deal in China. They are subtly different and there are additional requirements.
Great, thanks for that, Richard. Yeah, and on the Hong Kong point, I mean, yeah, so our answer here is of course yes. It is a separate regulatory jurisdiction as well. We have a team in Hong Kong, which we're also very happy to help to connect people to if they are interested in that. In talking in very broad brush terms, at least, that Hong Kong market generally has more advanced regulatory links and standards benchmarked to international regulators, including in the UK, but also in Europe and the US as well. And we are seeing an increasing number of initiatives being launched to connect Hong Kong, particularly with regulators, local regulators in the Chinese mainland, in southern China, in what they call the Greater Bay Area of Guangdong Province, in particular, just inside China, just opposite Hong Kong. Although those trials are still sort of taking off and not yet sort of fully scaled up and accessed by particularly foreign providers. But again, Hong Kong is a separate regulatory jurisdiction that does have a slightly different dynamic and a more international one in many areas compared to the Chinese mainland. I think there are a couple of questions here which maybe are either directed at me or that I should pick up as the sort of HMG representative. There's a couple of questions on export licenses in particular. I believe Gavin may have dropped off the line, but I will sort of address this in general terms. I'm very happy to follow up separately. So first of all, very sorry to hear that the export license timeline that you're going through may have led to a loss of business with a Chinese partner. I mean, I think it should be said, I mean, that is absolutely not what anybody is trying to achieve. But we are seeing, particularly due to some changes to the export licensing regime in the UK over the past 6 months, that there are increasing numbers of companies that maybe were not previously interacting with the export licensing system, who are now being caught up and needing to go through the process of applying for a license. And of course, the vast majority of licenses are granted, and the system is not a China system, it is a global system, but that there are occasions, according to the details of the regulation, which I say I won't go into in detail right now, given timing, but there are situations where companies that maybe hadn't previously interacted with it may now need to be applying for those licenses. DIT China is not, and I think this is absolutely right, we are not part of that formal license granting process, but there are teams in London that we can help to connect to. And indeed, of course, we are always interested to know how UK regulatory processes are impacting on UK-China trade, even when it is not a China-focused regulatory system. So very happy to follow up with Gavin or indeed any others that have similar questions. Gavin does also ask whether the BIA is involved in this. I did note the introduction from Steve did talk about involvement and providing industry representation on the NSIA development a year or two ago. It's something that I personally would very much welcome if BIA was looking to understand the impact on members of this regime and whether there are certain issues that would be fed in. We always very much welcome expert input into this system and into both the development and the application of it. And of course, as I said a moment ago, for any impacts on legitimate trade, which is something we're absolutely trying to avoid. So that would be welcome, and I'd be very happy to follow up separately with the team at the BIA to see if there is indeed demand and appetite for those types of discussions, because we're all trying to achieve the same thing here. We are trying to facilitate, to grow and enable legitimate trade in areas where we should be pushing this, while of course being very careful to step around any areas that would provide risks around national security, for example, in this case. So very happy to have those follow-up discussions. There was one other point I picked up in the chat, which maybe I should quickly address here, which was much earlier on. Nelson asked about should or is there a requirement for companies to manufacture in country in China? This is particularly in regards to certain instruments and I think some diagnostics ingredients. So I mean, this, I guess there are a number of answers to this. The starting point, and the one that you would usually get from Chinese regulators if you ask them directly, is no, of course not. There's no requirement there. You can manufacture wherever you like and then export into the Chinese market. The actual answer in practice, of course, is somewhat different, and this will depend on what it is in particular you are looking to manufacture and then to sell, who it is that you are selling to, and where it will be deployed within the Chinese market, and that will then, of course, be allow you to work out which regulations govern the sale. So, for example, does it fall under public procurement regulations? If it does, what sort of scale of sale are we looking at, and would it trigger certain thresholds where there are different sort of scrutinies and different rules? And actually, the general rule is the larger the sale, the more likely it is, and sometimes easier it is to have foreign products come in. There are, and we've been tracking this recently, some rather worrying trends in China at the moment towards not big changes, but perhaps more focus and a slight tightening of the public procurement, including in areas such as these public procurement regulations for foreign products. It is still possible, but there are certain processes, administrative procedures that need to be gone through by the Chinese acquirer of the product and the users of the products in order to explain and justify and get approval for procurement of foreign products. This is, of course, something at DIT that we're not particularly comfortable with and do not support, and we'll be very happy to work with British companies to help navigate that system and make representations if and where necessary to the relevant Chinese authorities. The final answer to this question is ultimately, though, it comes down to commercial discussions with Chinese partners, Chinese distributors that you are working with, and some of the better Chinese distributors, of course, will be able to help you to navigate any sort of regulations that put processes in the way of importing your products. So, some of the people we've heard from on the line today will no doubt have views and suggestions for any companies that do have concerns in this area, and we'll be keen to work with you to try to find a solution that works on a commercial basis for you and indeed for partners throughout the supply chain and distribution chain. So a few answers to that question. It's never an easy one, but of course we, from the UK government perspective, are very keen that there are flexibilities and that companies are able to produce wherever makes sense for them, and then serve the market through the best channels possible. And we'll be keen to help you find commercial partners and indeed navigate the regulatory procedures to enable all of that. The other questions that I've seen come towards Maheko, and they, I think, have been answered in the chat. Very happy from my side, before I hand back over to Steve and colleagues at the BIA here, but very happy to pick up any questions and further discussions offline afterwards. I'm always very keen to work together with the BIA, with your members and partners, and look forward to supporting further successes in UK-China trade investment in this area over the coming months and indeed years. So thank you very much for that, and I'll now hand back to Steve for some closing remarks and summaries. Steve, back to you.
Tom, thank you for a fantastic engagement. Thank you for chairing, for fielding all the questions. I realise we're significantly over time, but it's testament to the interest that we've kept the community with us here. I think you can see that there is a strong engagement and a desire to participate in this, to continue on this journey together from a BIA community. Can I thank the team in China and all the participants? Thank you to colleagues who've shared their company's stories. It's been a fantastic event, and it shows to us that there is continued engagement and a desire to do this despite the challenge of COVID and ongoing travel restrictions. So I take from this both the succor and desire that we should do more, and we will look to do that, and a keenness to engage. I hope you found it useful. Feedback to us is very useful. Thank you to the BIA team for organising behind the scenes, and to everyone who's participated. I'll let you get on with your day, wherever you are in the world, and thank you for engaging with us. Thank you all.